So now we come on to Lennie in section 2, and again we're going to look through some of the key quotations in which you can use to discuss him. So first of all, when we see that George is talking to Candy, Lennie watches him with his mouth open. Obviously, first of all, the fact that he watches him in and of itself, it's like he's waiting for instruction, wondering what to do. And the fact that he's watching with an open mouth could be surprise, but obviously the context of the situation doesn't leave much to be surprised about. So it's kind of more a gormless kind of just kind of watching and waiting, again, like a dog waiting for its master. So you can get the animal reference out of that. It's probably more fitting than the surprise angle. Immediately, Lennie got up and did the same with his bed. When George is actually tidying and cleaning up his bed, Lennie gets up and does exactly the same, which is obviously indicative again of him needing George for a lead. George mentions that his name is Lennie Small, which is obviously there's an irony in the fact that he's big, but also an actual truth in the fact that his brain is very small. So obviously you can play into his surname and obviously analyse why Steinbeck chose it in different ways. Then George compliments him and says he's strong as a bull, which again is actually stressing an animalistic quality and is also showing us how strong he is. And then when Lennie says it straight afterwards, he repeats it. He just kind of copies part of what he says. Partly, obviously, you can see it's like a childlike pride in himself, but obviously he's been told not to say anything. So hence George scowls at him, and then instantly, like a little child, he drops his head in shame. So again, you've got that kind of reinforced. When the boss turns to look at the two men again, that's obviously because it's really strange for them to be in that kind of relationship, traveling together, and he's wondering obviously what the relationship between them is, like whether one's using the other or whether one is kind of trying to defend the other for something, etc., and which is exactly what it is, because a boss on a ranch like this, he wouldn't want any trouble. He just wants things to be easy, and he wants workers that will give him no hassle. And when he sees anything suspicious or anything that flags, like two men coming together, one not letting the other talk, it's going to be quite, it makes him stand out. And the reason that's really important in our assessment of Lennie here is because the boss straight away upon seeing them realizes there's something odd about these two, which kind of earmarks them to us as something odd, and obviously something odd will happen from them, and obviously by the end of it we find out that it does. When Curly challenges him, obviously Lennie doesn't say anything for a while, and then when George again gives him the command of what to do, Lennie then finally actually speaks, says, "We just come in," said Lennie softly. And again, for such a big guy, strong guy, he's kind of very soft, he's scared, etc. And obviously the tension is really important there, because Lennie's kind of wilting in front of Curly. So it shows again that they're probably going to have trouble, because Curly feels like he's got the upper hand over him straight away. And then George tells him and us, obviously, signposts quite clearly, you're going to have trouble with that curly guy. And it's interesting, first of all, that George pitches it saying you're going to have trouble with him. So obviously we set him up for that. But then at the end of the chapter, I've mentioned in the last video that George says of himself he's going to have trouble with him as well. And that's obviously, he's the main antagonist. Curly's the main antagonist in this, and obviously the main person he goes for is Lennie. So it's really important that this is where the start of their relationship is, or the start of their troubles are. And then Lennie, again, he's kind of used to feeling guilty here, so he actually asks him timidly, and obviously the fact that he asks timidly again shows that childlike, kind of sad, kind of lonely, helpless person. Says, "You ain't mad, are you, George?" But obviously Lennie hasn't done anything here in this section after Curly's, just thrown him for no reason. And then George reminds him that he has to stay and look after himself, and then here he repeats things to himself again, childlike again, trying to drone it into himself, and he says, "The brush by the river, the brush by the river." And obviously this has been mentioned to us several times now, and obviously in succeeding chapters. So we've got one after the other telling us that this is going to be important later on, and obviously that he needs to know this. It's being stressed to us that he does know this, and therefore obviously we're going to find him by the river by the end, because he's going to have done something wrong. So when Curly's wife comes in, we get that, and he watches her fascinated, and obviously the use of the word fascinated is just kind of like he's enthralled by her. And then he repeats a couple of times, "Gosh, she was pretty." And again, like the simple way he talks, and the fact that he says "gosh," it's not really a word in and of itself. He's just just kind of really taken by her, and not necessarily because he understands the sexual nature probably of what it is. He just sees something kind of pretty that he wants to touch, pet, be close to, and have his own kind of variety of intimacy with. But this isn't, again, something sexual. This is the same kind of thing that he has with animals, etc. And he's obviously, it reinforces, we know this partly, it's reinforced by the fact that he's childlike, and so the sexual feelings aren't really going to be there for him. He's just thinks it's something nice to look at, like a child would find sequins or something interesting and riveting as well. So here, and this is actually really sad, because here Lennie sees and understands that his fate here is doomed, and his fate is sealed, and he'll be doomed if he stays here. So he actually eagerly leans towards George and says to him, "Let's go, George, let's get out of here, it's mean here." And so he knows straight away that things are actually going to be bad, and George kind of plays it off as nothing, thinks they can get away with it. But this is really interesting, because this is where Lennie's kind of got an insight more so than George does. George realizes there's going to be trouble, but Lennie probably sees the extent of it. He sees there's going to be no way he can get out of this, and obviously that's for several reasons. First of all, because obviously Curly has confronted him. Second of all, because he's seen Curly's wife, and you could argue that he knows himself, he won't be able to control herself. And again, it's been shown to us in the words for the fact that he repeated, "Gosh, she was pretty twice." But moreover, also, it's kind of like instinctual from when he comes in. He realizes he doesn't know what to do at any point. We see him following George straight away, and we see when the boss comes in, he didn't know how to talk to the boss, and when Curly comes in, he didn't know how to talk to Curly, etc. And he hasn't had a conversation with Candy, so he really doesn't fit in here, and he just knows it's awkward, and he probably finds that it's mean here. And that's quite a big thing to him to say, because half the interaction, or a third, of the interaction we've seen George and Lennie have at the moment, is that George is always kind of just teasing him, ribbing him, making fun of him, putting him down. But he doesn't class that as mean in any way. It's this, the atmosphere he sees here that he classes as mean, and it's obviously sad in and of itself. There's a compliment on his strength and why he's so important, and again, there's a reference from the reference that Slim actually says. Slim says, "I drowned 4 of them right off," which is basically indicating. He's talking about his dog's pups there. The dog had 9, and he's drowned 4 of them right off, and that's kind of an interesting signpost for Lennie, because here Slim has done the right thing by killing these 4 dogs, because they either wouldn't get fed or would have been too much of a drain on the mum, so they would have been in a bad situation. So he's done the right thing by killing him right off, and obviously it's a bit of a signpost for what's going to happen to Lennie, because he's not going to be able to handle the prison punishment, or the whatever it's going to be for killing Curly's wife. So at the end of the book, this is being signpost for us here that George is going to have to do the same thing in a kind of caring way for him. And then obviously he says he wants a pups, so that one of the reasons obviously is because he wants them from before, but also he's kind of worried about the animals, and again, it just shows us the care about the animals. He says he won't kill no more of them. And then there's this interesting kind of little feeling towards the end, because we've just had it here where Lennie sensed that he needs to leave, but here this kind of blind dog, this half-blind dog, he probably doesn't really know its way around, doesn't really know what's going on. And when Curly comes back in, when it's an empty room, again, Curly just coming back in there just shows how kind of paranoid and he is, and he's just going around looking for a fight. But here the dog raised its head, but when Curly just jerked out, the grizzled head sank again to the floor. So when Curly steps in, the dog raises its head. Now you could actually take that in China like an intuition that the dog has of Curly's something to be paid attention to, because we don't see him make any distinct movements when he's with he's by Candy's side. The rest of the time he's just a lame dog. But here when Curly, someone evil, steps in, he kind of looks up and almost becomes aware of the evil, and then when he leaves, it kind of goes down again. So again, it's kind of that animalistic connection between George and the dog here. Obviously they share the same fate that they both put down, but there's a connection as well in that they both sense the evil. And obviously Lennie puts it into words. Apologies if I said George when I meant Lennie. Lennie obviously puts it into words here, but then the dog shows it to us by his actions, and both of them have this kind of awkward fear and feeling around Curly.